I was wrong about Silent Hill F's combat. A couple of days ago, I put a video discussing not just the gameplay, but my overall thoughts on Silent Hill F's delivery as an overall piece of art and how it tied into the rest of the series. This was a bit rambly for me and not very deep as far as discussing the overarching themes and messaging of the game. But I did have a lot of thoughts initially after my first playthrough, but since completing my second, I have so many more. This game was clearly designed with multiple playthroughs in mind. Unlike other titles in the series where multiple endings often feel optional or purely just alternative outcomes for the sake of a fun what-if scenario, this one stands out by making each subsequent ending feel like a meaningful extension of the story and world building beyond the intended first conclusion. The structure ensures that you always encounter the first ending, that invites you to uncover the rest. Hinako's lack of agency during this initial playthrough, especially when compared to protagonists in other games, is genuinely devastating, but that seems to be the point. The game leans into this haunting theme of what it means for a character to have no control over their own story, or even their own life. It won't resonate with everyone, but for those it does, the impact is unforgettable. But before we dive too deep, if you're a fan of Silent Hill or just enjoy detailed analysis of survival horror games, maybe consider giving this video a like or subscribing to the channel, as it really helps me fight against the almighty algorithm. Silent Hill F stands out right now because of its main focus on melee-based combat, attacking, dodging, winding up power attacks, compared to the more eclectic combat of previous games that included melee and even had achievements if you only played the game that way, but you were mostly juggling a variety of guns and other combat styles to achieve your progression. I think this style of combat here is a major storytelling tool that at first feels like a disconnected system until I realized what my first playthrough had done to my mindset and muscle memory when encountering fights in New Game Plus. The focus on Japanese culture, history, and societal struggles are rampant throughout the story and give some real weight behind every swing. Now I know when you first dive in it kind of feels slow, maybe even clunky, right? It's easy to write it off as just another horror game that sacrifices fluid combat for atmosphere. But here's the thing, once you start your second playthrough, something kind of clicks. The timing, the rhythms of fighting, the way enemies react based on your proximity or even your silence, it's not random, it's calculated. It's not perfect, but it's like the game wants you to feel uncomfortable the first time and then gives you the tools to master it on the second go around. However, I'm definitely no master and I'm still for sure getting hit by even the lowest tier enemies. But I can tell there's a major shift from my first days with the game, but I'm actually having a lot of fun playing through it again now. Options like the Sacred Sword or having a majority of your faith and other upgrades carry over to your New Game Plus makes a major difference for that second go around. And I'm starting to think that this is the first Silent Hill game where the monsters might be scared of you, the player. Honestly, the deeper you go, the more you realize that Silent Hill F isn't just trying to scare you, it's teaching you. Systems that felt janky at first, they start to make sense, like how some doors don't open until you've hit certain points in combat, or how some areas feel unfairly spaced out. It's not just bad design, it's intentional no matter how much it can piss me off. It's forcing you to be smart, to read the environment, and to manage your panic. The devs built this slow burn realization into the very bones of the game, and it's only when you give it a second go, maybe even third, that you realize how tight it actually is. Sure, there's a few animation things that could have been smoothed out or fine-tuned for a $70 game. I don't want to discount its shortcomings by any means, but I really think people online, myself included, kind of wrote off the combat a bit too early because we had an idea of how this game might play built up in our minds. I say if you're feeling pretty stuck, just give it a chance to kind of open up itself to you, and definitely play on story mode, because how great is this reveal? On the surface, the entity fight feels like a surreal, grotesque boss encounter, but what makes it compelling is the emotional layer embodied within the fight mechanics. The entity is a corrupted reflection of Sakuko, and the boss doesn't just attack, it responds to your behavior in ways that mirror emotional rejection, betrayal, and grief. Aggressive attacks trigger if you use a long-range weapon excessively, kind of like a metaphor for being emotionally distant. The boss jumps between phases abruptly and uses a delayed-based attack that break normal dodging rhythms, something you don't really have a lot of stamina for yet in the game. But on a second playthrough, those patterns make more sense. Once disorienting, are tied to very specific cues. I still find it hilarious when I swing swing and an attack doesn't land, which is just awkward as f. But it also feels very real. Hinako isn't the Elden Lord, she's a high school girl trying to fight off centuries of tradition that have never been built in her favor. Almost every boss encounter from that point on in my second playthrough had the same understanding when addressing the arena. The whole fox arm mechanic took a bit of getting used to that first time, and it's either something you're into or you're not. And I don't mean from a gameplay standpoint, but just the idea of in a slow burn psychological horror. Cause who doesn't want a sexy cult daddy to come and rip your arm off and give you a new one that's all full of hair? The whole series has always been about horror manifesting through grotesque transformations, so the fox arm feels like a natural evolution of that theme, plus it adds a unique gameplay twist, more aggressive and visceral than usual, but still slow and deliberate, giving you a chance to make mistakes. It doesn't just turn the game into an action fest. Some people say it breaks the immersion or feels completely out of place, but I actually think it enhances the surreal nightmare. Like, it's supposed to make you uncomfortable. Isn't that the point? By late game, you should have access to the charge lunge that lets the fox arm impale or whip enemies at mid-range. Even though the fox arm feels powerful in that moment, it doesn't give you invincibility, and you still move kind of sluggish during windups. And all this reinforces the overall theme of the game. Silent Hill F very directly criticizes the identity of gender roles and women's autonomy. It's not like this is something that's hiding in the background. The devs kind of put it front and center. It's on every note, all the magazines you find scattered around the city, and the story as a whole leading to a conclusion that leaves Hinako fending for her life in a way that feels very honest and devastating. Fans of this series that are claiming this game is too woke or misses the mark as a rightful entry to the Silent Hill universe are missing the point by a lot. This franchise has been and always will be a think piece on the horror of modern society. I would consider this even to be one of the easier games to understand. So to either disregard these themes or not understand them leads me to believe you never really understood the franchise from the beginning. Hinako is powerless in a world that is trying to minimize and silence her until she invests in herself with the power you've built from within, using the two currencies of faith and Emaplax. And that upgrade cap increases on New Game Plus and beyond. I do recommend playing story mode for your first time with the combat, just because the difficulty and pain being delivered through this makes it almost impossible for a first run. But since most things carry over, you can finally bump things up to hard. Some people might think this is a baby-ass baby mode route to take, but it's still got some heft to it on story mode, and that'll give you the chance to enjoy the story, learn the combat before you want to assert the get good mentality that a lot of gatekeeping gamers spout online these days, because the story continues to unravel and even get deeper on New Game Plus. Multiple cutscenes were different, letters had been changed or updated to enhance the emotions the characters are going through. Through one of the letters on the mountain, we find out about this herb ground into something called the Flower of the Gods, which very plainly reads, according to folklore, the herb can give one the ability to converse with gods, visit their lands, and even awaken dormant powers. When ground up, its seeds are said to smell of peaches. This could explain Hinako and the extension the town's ability to reach beyond itself, welcoming in power as well as unwanted entities. What many people get wrong about Silent Hill F is assuming it's just another traditional survival horror story with jump scares and psychological trauma, which in reality, it's a much more layered exploration of grief, isolation, and transformation through decay. For a story that takes place in 1960s Japan, the narrative isn't about escaping monsters, it's about how trauma, bullying, and societal pressure can rot something from the inside out. The gameplay's core mechanics, managing sanity, stamina, and upgrading the faith through offerings, are deeply symbolic of the protagonist's struggle to find a meaning and control in a world that has already written her off. The floral horror isn't just body horror, it's a metaphor for beauty born from pain, or how trauma can consume and reshape identity. Players who treat the game as just a spooky action horror miss the real weight behind its slower pacing and introspective tone. It's not about surviving monsters, it's about surviving yourself.